Welcome to Meet the Voter, episode 15. And also, this is a timeline production of 186. So it'll be up tonight on podcast. This is a 30-minute show, and then we'll hang on to answer folks' questions and be up on YouTube. So we're all back. We've got Dr. Nicholas Hernandez from Laguna Beach. He's our socialist Democrat. Well, he's a Bernie Sanders supporter. Sam Brooks, who's an intern with the Democrat Party in LA. And I don't know who you're supporting Bernie Sanders too, right?
Yeah.
And then we got Jonathan Denward. He's supporting Bernie Sanders too, man. I'm outnumbered. And I'm supporting Ron Paul. Guaranteed not to win, I guess. Sad. Because he's the only one I can name within the Republican side.
You mean Rand?
Rand, to say Ron. Rand Paul.
Yeah, Rand Paul.
Rand Paul. Dr. Rand Paul. So anyway, we've got football at the wazoo, but I expect that this show is going to we have quite a few folks. Thank you. We have 14 people in the house right now answering questions. We hope to bring them up and cycle them back in and out after we finish the podcast today. So we thank the crowd. It's really good today compared to so much football out there. And earlier today, the Patriots lost to the Broncos.
It's all double Dutch for me, Bill.
And the topic, and we're going to talk about Meet the Press, and we're going to go into predictions, and we're going to talk about the taxes in the 3 episodes. And I better start the timer. So now I got the timer going, the magic timer. I spaz with the timer. Here's the timer. So when I bring that up, we will take a short break, so we can try to put some sponsors in. And we will put sponsors in. WP Tonic, great WordPress organization of service, right, Jonathan?
Certainly is. We do all the heavy lifting so you can concentrate building your business up.
Yeah, a great real estate company.
So you can pay all those taxes.
So it's a crazy show. It's a weird weekend. So anyway, commentary, Meet the Press. Nick, do you want to start out? You watched Meet the Press today. Do you want to go over it? I've got some pretty good notes. Do you want to start?
No, I didn't get to see it today. I've got.
Jonathan, did you see it? I saw it.
Yes, I saw it all, Bill.
Okay. Yeah. Another thing too is if you go to the website under research, you can go into Meet the Press. It's the second tab, and they usually have it up in the afternoon, the show. So you can rewatch the show online. You don't have to watch it in the morning.
Well, they show it twice on TV too on Sundays. They show it later, like about 11 o'clock. Something like that.
I pull it up right now, streaming.
But I did read your notes.
Clinton unphrased by possible Bloomberg president's run. That's the topic on the. It's pretty good if you go on there.
Well, what did you think, Bill? Because Heary seems to be in a kind of. I know it's for public consumption, but I do sense that she's in also almost total denial of the reality of the situation. Also, I think she's. I hope, I agree with what you've said over the weeks. I do hope that her illegal activities in the end do bite her on the backside. But she seems to be in a total bubble. What's your feeling, Bill?
Well, I have a lot of friends who are in the military, and they don't really, the 4-star generals who are my classmates really don't discuss it, but my classmates who are retired and who socialize and are friends in D.C., pretty much is out there that the entire, the FBI basically has so many people, so much information out there, and they can't let it out, but sort of the writing's on the wall that I just don't see how she's going to survive this email issue with the classified. Over 1,000 reclassified emails. At least 2 of the emails were levels above top secret, still top secret, but they got other criteria on them that basically endangered the lives of Americans worldwide because they were let on a non-classified platform. And that's just, if you grew up in that environment, you know how critical it is and how many people get in trouble because of classified. The survival thing, like I've been saying, is that's got to be coming down, or I don't know what's going to happen. Now, I always said that if she may not go to jail, but probably the people who bridge the material will go to jail.
Bill, I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think? I think it's a nice idea what you're saying. If she did do this and it is a huge breach of classified information and putting the American public at risk, that's definitely valid. But then I just think immediately to the financial crisis of 2008, where a couple of corporations through, really substantiated cases of complete fraud that we have witnesses to and documentations of, collapsed or, affected the entire world's economy. And then we're still not actually even pursued by the Department of Justice of the United States. So
I think
it doesn't sound so outlandish to me that she would get away with it.
We'll find out what happens. I mean, when I was a first lieutenant, I once took a piece of classified on a code. I was going through a special forces course, a Green Beret, and we had to learn a certain code and classification. And I had notes that were reclassified and classified that I didn't consider them classified, but anyway, we took a test outside and they opened my notes and they saw this writing in there. And basically it'd been since the day before or night before, and had been with me the entire time. If those hadn't been with me, I got in trouble as it was. But classified is nothing to mess around with. It's very, very, it's very controlled. Yet if you have a classification, I had a top secret, I really have access to a lot of information. So it's kind of a strange thing. It's going to be very difficult because the way we treat classified, it's going to be, I think there's going to be some issues here. It's because think of the State Department. Just think of what has to be classified, especially for the safety of the members of the State Department and themselves and the travel. Anytime you move people in a combat zone, there's
I think the other factors, it's the time period and also the volume of documentation. Everything that but we are dealing with Hillary Clinton, and nothing seems to stick, does it? I thought the other thing, I like your reflection, Bill, is when she was asked a question about the payments that she's received from Wall Street about her speaking. I thought for once a really pointed question was aimed at her. Why did Wall Street give her like 200 to 300,000 a pop to listen to the old hag go on about, she hasn't really got any kind of logical replies. She kind of mumbled something that they wanted some deep insights about. And I thought to myself, are you kidding? And I think this is the thing that's really damaging her, because she has got absolutely no credibility with anybody.
Deflection is what she usually uses, changing the subject or going on to another subject or just babbles some silliness. But she's not the only one that does that.
I was going to say, Nick, I was going to say the same thing you just did. That's kind of the bar.
Compare her to Bernie. This is my very first note this morning from Meet the Press. Hillary Clinton, and they asked her, what is your one issue to use? What is your one issue I just wrote this fast, to use your political capital? And I put there, and then she said there are many issues. She was not clear on the answer. She's speaking of healthcare, then the economy, then fixing the tax code, but she couldn't come up with one specific first priority. And almost Bernie Sanders has his priorities laid out. This is the first priority, second priority, third priority. So she didn't have that laid out, and that made her look like she doesn't have a list of priorities. She just has generalities. So I think that's weak in itself.
Well, we do know what. Sorry, Sam. We do know what her priorities are, to keep her cronies happy. That give her $300,000 a pop to listen to her boring speeches. That's what her agenda is. Just to keep her crony friends happy, isn't it?
And literally, I think what's interesting is that she's the only candidate. Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who has, not only does he have his priorities, and I mean between Republican and Democrat candidates, he's had the same priorities in the same order for 40 years.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty. I don't think there's anyone else in the race who's actually been consistent in the same way.
He is also a master at politics. He's come up through the systems, and he's been very effective running races. He actually knows the mechanics of running a race.
But Bill, can you imagine her in competition with Mr. Trump? And all that Mr. Trump has to do is just read out all these Wall Street. I won't say what I really think they are. He just reads out the backhand, the fees that she's got from these people. He'd just be on national, and he'd just have a list, 300 from this 400 from these people, it's just going to be a bloodbath. He'll destroy her in front of national television.
Well, it is being circulated, Jonathan, on the social media. Everywhere I look, I'm seeing numbers about huge numbers about what she and the Clinton Foundation get for their speeches and their special favors. I mean, I'm seeing it daily. So it not on TV as much, but plenty on social media.
So
Twitter,
guys,
Facebook.
Did you watch the endorsement speech from Sarah Palin?
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
I just want to lighten up the mood for a little bit. We can have some fun and talk about that.
I don't know why Trump didn't explode.
Like Sarah Palin, politician / rapper /
She, whatever she takes, I want some of it. I don't know what she's taking, but I want some of it. It's probably legal as well. I don't know, but whatever she's taking, I love to have some of it. It was like watching a rabid dog, wasn't it? It was like a beast. And even Trump, he just stood there motionless, and he just couldn't believe what he was hearing.
And then he's kind of look at the crowd. Oh, they seem to like it.
He just couldn't believe it, could he? He just thought, for once I felt sorry for him.
That entire room full of people got to collectively experience the most awkward moment in politics, in recent history, and they're all sitting there kind of what is she talking about?
I don't even think she knows what she's talking about.
Well, I think it was interesting because in all seriousness, it seemed to me, I'm trying to imagine how that speech went through the levels of, the people that work with her, and then was approved, and then was decided upon, and then was put into action. And, the only thing I could come up with was that someone thought that it was something very novel and new and innovative to sort of, the structure of it, if you're talking about writing and rhetoric and things like that. But I think they missed the mark there a little bit.
It was. I never heard anything like it.
So on Meet the Press today, Bill, Jonathan, was there anything about Flint?
No, that's the interesting thing, really. It's a good point. They discussed nothing of it, and I thought
that's one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen, and anybody getting away with it. And then the governor is now saying that the EPA has no authority to make them fix it. What? And then blaming Obama. I'm just, and at first, they told me
Johnson.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really understand it, because if he had poisoned my children with lead, I would hunt him to the ends of the earth. I would pursue him until my money ran out, until I got hold of him, and I sorted him out personally. And I don't understand how he's not arrested
the numbers
for the criminal which he is.
Criminal,
the piece of work.
Well, it's even worse than I thought it was really stupid when at first they said they switched the water to save $12 million. Well, that's peanuts when you're running a city. So $12 million didn't mean anything, and that didn't make any sense to me. And then now they're finding out that what really went on is something that had to do with hundreds of millions of dollars, and trying to wreck a company that was giving them the good water. And so they were trying to bankrupt this other company. And so it actually had to do with hundreds of millions of dollars, not 12 million, because nobody would take that kind of risk for 12 million. I mean, it made no sense to me whatsoever. And now it's coming out that it had to do with a lot more money and a bunch of kickbacks. But so now the governor will only release emails in 2014 or 2014 and 2015.
I say that one
release
thing,
them from 2013, which is when the decisions were being made and who was doing it.
I'll say one thing about Nevada, Nick. If the governor of Nevada did that, he wouldn't get out of the state. Somebody
he
wouldn't get out of the state. Literally, he would his life would be if the governor of Nevada tried to pull what this creep's tried to pull, he wouldn't get out of the state. So I'm not trying to be. What do you reckon, Bill? I don't think.
No, you know what's one thing I like. There's a lot of things I don't like in Nevada, but I like the form of government that we have a part-time government. The governor lives a few blocks away from me here. Doesn't live in the capital. His daughter went to Reno High School and just graduated. You're right though, because it's a small state that he couldn't survive here. He'd have to have a lot of protection.
Nick,
we're going to go to break and we're going to come back with predictions. So we're going to go to break, and I'll tell you what the prediction question is when we come back.
Sailor Palin.
Hey, John. Okay, we're coming back for a break for section 2 this time. We're going to go right into the predictions. We're going to hit the predictions. And before we go to the predictions, I'm going to ask around the table. I just can't. I've changed my predictions this week, but this is so crazy out there. You couldn't look at a crazier race, and it's going to even get crazier when football season ends and if people start really paying attention. So as we go about a week away until we hit the first of the primaries, and Nick, I'm going to start with you. What's your short term being? Who do you think is going to win these first 2 primaries in New Hampshire and in Iowa? And then
I'm going to be sticking with Bernie. He's pulled ahead in the polls. Some polls way ahead, and of course others closer. But finally, for the last 2 weeks, we've been seeing Bernie everywhere on on the media. And I'm pretty sure Trump is going to win it. I have to always take a breath and hope that he doesn't. But the one hope is that I've seen Rubio come up recently in the last few days. But I'm sticking with Bernie and Trump.
Okay, and Bernie and Trump for both of the primaries, and then
both of them,
also the outcome. So boom, boom. Sam, how about you? You've been gone. Well, you weren't here last week, but what's your predictions?
The same. I mean, as far as the outcome goes, same as Nick. I think it's going to be Bernie and Trump. But I think that anyone who's a Bernie Sanders supporter, I would hope that Trump becomes the candidate because I think it's fantastic for the Democratic Party for that to happen. Whereas like anyone else, as much as I may disagree with I'm not any of the other candidates, there's a lot of them, but a few of the other candidates like Rubio, for example, they can actually present a tiny bit of like legitimacy. Even if I disagree with their views, they're much more legitimate candidates and would probably pose a lot more risk to the Democratic candidate. So I'm hoping for Trump.
And Jonathan?
Well, on the Republican side, it's like a Shakespearean play. It's like Lady Macbeth, isn't it? She's just facing total annihilation. I think, she just can't believe it herself, and probably her lab dogs that just tell her whatever she wants to hear, probably telling her what she wants to hear. But the writing's on the wall for her. She's a monster. She is a political monster of the top level. When it comes to the Bernie Sanders, she's got nothing to offer anybody apart from her crony backers on Wall Street. When it comes to on the Republican side, it's like a Greek tragedy. It's like the Odyssey. They just can't believe what they're seeing. It's their worst nightmare. But they're getting their payback, and Trump is their payback. He is their Odyssey. People say Cruz, but Cruz in a way is a worse nightmare for them than Trump. So, but I don't actually. I see nothing stopping Trump apart from blatant corruption and at the convention. But you never know the Republican Party. They're capable of almost anything, so you don't know really.
Well, I'm going to put up mine. So first of all, who's for president, the nominations? Who's going to be the nominees? Trump, same as everybody else, Trump and Bernie. I'm going to say something a little different here today. I think for New Hampshire, it's going to be it's going to be Bernie. He's so far ahead, and it's going to be Trump. They control that area, so they've got that knocked down. But I think in Iowa is a whole different ball game. I think you're going to see Hillary Clinton. If you look at her traditional politics and her staff and her people, even though she seems to be very disorganized and not focused, I think you're going to see a lot of negatives come out, and they're going to do something nasty against Bernie that we don't even know about. So I think in Iowa, she may take Iowa because of politics, just the way she runs her campaign at that point. Then after this, we'll start about what's going on in the South. She'll have an advantage in the South too. So I think Iowa's too close. I think Iowa, she's going to take it, but Bernie's going to take New Hampshire. Now Trump, I think Trump will probably take both states, but it's going to be close in Iowa, of course. I think he'll probably take both states right now because the Republicans there's so many Republicans out there just are all over the place, and I don't know who has the money, and it's really crazy. It's entertaining, that's for sure. And then for long-term predictions, I don't think Hillary's going to get it because of the just the violations of security is going to get caught up with her, and the Bloomberg issue. So I think there's going to be a candidate, not Bernie, not who we don't even maybe not even know yet, comes out and becomes a Democrat nominee, and it could even be Bloomberg. Even though Bloomberg said he's going to run as an independent, the Democrats may go out there and just try to find somebody someplace to run. So I think the number one person who really knows what's going on is the president of the United States, to tell the truth.
Hey, Bill, if they get really desperate, the Democratic, they can always get Sarah Palin, can't they?
Oh. Well, you know.
So go ahead. Unless there's any one other prediction or question that any of you think we should ask. I was thinking, what are the other things we could predict?
You know, right here, somebody, JPEG said, you know, Bernie may do well in the first or 3 states, then get killed almost everywhere else. And I replied, that's what they said both times with Obama, that he didn't have a prayer. And I think that you might not be in touch with the millennials if you, if that's the vision you have of what's happening. And if you look, I think one of the most telling things is the number of donations, small donations he has. And it's historic. He's already beat Obama, you know, and those small donations are important. Those are people who don't have very much money and are going to go to the polls, and they are supporting Bernie. You know, it's not the corporations that just because somebody has a big war chest doesn't necessarily mean they have a lot of followers. I mean, look at Bush.
Yeah. And Bill, you made that comment about you think, it's likely that the Democratic Party is going to have something up its sleeve in order to hinder Sanders in becoming the nominee. But in essence, to a certain degree, that already happened, and it was
right. They've tried
ridiculously, like in an unprecedented way, unsuccessful. To see how quickly the public actually forced the party to turn around and back down within 24 hours of this whole thing happening was really astonishing, I think.
He did lose his 39-year-old PhD, a social scientist who was doing the social network, running his computer systems. Hey, we're going to go to a break.
I just want to say something quickly, Bill. I don't think it's so much the strength of Bernie Sanders in a way. I think he's getting stronger. I think the fundamental thing which the establishment, which I saw on Meet the Press, because they're in a total bubble, that crowd in Washington. They don't understand. They can't rationalize what's happening in the Democratic Party nor in the Republican. They just don't even understand what's going on because they're in a total bubble. But when it comes to Bernie Sanders, it wasn't so much his strength, it's the utter weakness of Hillary Clinton. And what I mean is, she's very like Jeff Bush. She's the Democratic version of Jeff Bush. She knows all the people. She's got all the money. But the actual what is the core message? The core message is, well, I'm going to sort out I'm going to help my crony friends, and we all know I'll say anything that will get me into power. And the day after, it'll be business as usual. And unless you're totally brain dead, everybody knows that's what the score's going to be. So why the hell would they vote for the witch? You know, why would they, anybody that's got any brains?
Guys, we're going to a break now. We're going to come back with the topic this week, and it's going to be taxation. Not how they spend the money, but just how we're taxed. So, okay, coming back from the show, we're going to talk this last period about the U.S. tax system. And first of all, we sort of talked off the cuff, and I don't think anybody thinks it's fair or consistent or really works. It's very expensive to run. And I'm going to let Sam. Sam actually just did a paper. So what brought this paper on? What was that for your class, your school?
Yeah, it was actually like a sort of a choose your own topic kind of thing for issues of American government. And I wanted to learn more about tax policy because I didn't know too much about it. So that's where it came from. So I decided to choose, should we have a flat tax? And then sort of like use taxation theory, which is a section of political science in itself, to answer that question. But so it was nice because I explored all of the different predominant theories that we use when we talk about taxes. So
go ahead. Tell us about the different theories and what you think would be the best system to put in place.
So the most popular, most used globally today, theories of taxation, there's a couple of main ones. You have benefit theory. So benefit theory is the idea that people should be taxed in proportion to the extent to which they benefit from the effects of the taxation. So it's like widely disputed theory because the idea would be that whoever benefits the most is paying the most. Yet it's obvious that perhaps the people who benefit the most from taxation are the ones who are the least able to participate, financially.
Right. I know exactly what you just said. Yeah, especially for the very, very, very poor or indigent.
Yeah. So then you have sacrifice theory, which says that individuals should only pay tax on the portion of income that is spent on luxuries. So the idea is that if we could ascertain, what is the minimum needed for living, then we could tax only on what is above that. And then ability to pay theory is kind of self-explanatory. It's a progressive system in which we think that the lower someone's income, the less they should have to pay. And so what's interesting is that in the United States today, and within those last two theories that I mentioned, is the predominant theory of taxation globally at this point in time. And what that is marginal utility theory. Marginal utility theory says that, and it's really cool theory because we can all completely understand it by just creating a hypothetical situation in our minds. So we imagine one guy makes $10,000 a year and one guy makes $500,000 a year. And arbitrarily, the American government imposes a 50% tax, right? So how does that affect those two individuals? The one who makes $10,000 a year is now making $5,000 a year, which is maybe the difference between kind of getting by and completely not getting by. And the guy who makes $500,000 a year is now has $250,000 a year. So what it says is that for each unit of money, additional unit of money that a person earns, each unit loses value. So does that make sense? So for every dollar more you earn, each dollar becomes inherently less valuable. So
right.
This is the argument.
Yeah, I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the argument and the philosophy behind the majority of taxation, and especially in the United States, why we have progressive taxes, right?
Right. That's the theory behind it, the marginal utility theory. By the way, that was a really good laydown of the four different theories. 5 theories. That was really good.
It's interesting stuff. Well, because I do political philosophy, so I'm more interested in like the theoretical side of it. But
you know what? On benefit theory, one tax that we apply that's probably a real easy to understand tax on benefit theory. It's the gas tax. You pay at the pump. So the more gas you buy, the more tax you pay for gas tax and roads. It goes right to roads, and it's supposedly one of the best systems going because now you buy gasoline. You pay a tax for the roads, and the road money goes right into roads. That's how it's really.
That's like a controversial issue, though, as well, because then you have this whole section of what are the kind of arguably corrupt taxes that we have in place. So really regressive taxation or hidden taxation. Mm-hmm. And so the gas tax is one of those where people believe that 100% of the gas tax is going to roads. And so it makes perfect sense. And it's being talked about a lot that's really not true in a lot of cases. And so it's actually a hidden or questionable tax.
Well, there's sales tax on top of it too, but there is definitely a portion that goes directly to roads, and it's by state, and then the feds have a federal tax.
That's the thing. It's the by state part where some states are not using it for the intended, or what is thought to be the intended purpose, and some are, But what's interesting, I mean, I'd be interested to know what your guys' opinion is on what kind of system is the ideal system. So you have the main difference, like 2 categories, which is regressive or progressive taxes, right? So either or flat tax. So either you're taxing people who have less income more, or people with more income more, or this idea of a flat tax. So what do you guys think sounds?
We'll explain the flat tax never truly made sense to me, because what is a flat tax? I mean, where is it? Is it just an employee on employees' wages? How about a small business, and how about a corporation? I'll try to be as concise as possible, because it is extremely complicated. There's a ton of parts to it, but there are a few different proposals for a flat tax. And one of them would be the first, which is really the least advocated for, because it really is super regressive. They'd say literally a flat tax. So we have no more tax exemptions whatsoever. We take the entire, 10,000 page IRS tax code and throw it out the window. And everyone literally pays the exact same percentage no matter what they earn. So a lot of people don't even go this route because like we said, with marginal utility theory, it's obvious that it would be such a heavy burden on people of low income. So there's this sort of adapted version of a flat tax, which says that we're going to only impose this flat tax after a certain income, right. Kind of what we consider to be the necessary amount to live. And some people also say we want to keep a couple exemptions, like mortgage, charitable donations, something like that. So the proponents of the flat tax are really arguing you could do your taxes by postcard. So that's one of their big things. You eliminate the IRS. They don't exist anymore really at all. You protect people's privacy. You save tons of money on collecting taxes and so on and so forth. So, however, if it's obvious that even if you started after a minimum income, it's still highly regressive, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're going to say, maybe after, $18,000 a year, people are taxed after that amount of income, but you're still having that really disproportionate effect on people of lower incomes. No, I've seen it, and they have different levels of taxation. Hey, the other one too that fit into there, which we don't hear about, and this is what makes it difficult for me. If you have your own business or a corporation, how are they taxed? For example, you write a business, you have expenses. You write off all your expenses. I mean, you couldn't do it on the gross of a business, the gross income of a business. It would wipe some businesses out on low margins, like a grocery store.
Well, the idea would be that there would be a corporate tax that's decided upon, and then it would be just as simple. There's no exemptions. So a lot of people, like the IRS tax code is so complicated. That's what bothers a lot of people. Right. Like it's literally like something, I forget the exact number, but it's like 10,000 pages long. So a lot of what that stuff is corporate tax exemptions that have been created by corporations for corporations, right. Which assist them in not having to participate in the economy, which Forbes did a really interesting study. They took, or not Forbes, it was the Tax Policy Institute or the Tax Policy Initiative. So they took the Fortune 500 companies from Forbes and they selected the 233 highest grossing companies. And then they studied over the past 5 years what they've paid in taxes. And I can't roll it off my head, the exact numbers, but at least it was something like at least over 50% of them hadn't paid any taxes for at least one full year in the past 5. And that their tax rate is supposed to be 35%. And on average, all of those companies together had paid somewhere around 21% taxes. and a good chunk of them had paid absolutely no taxes in the past 5 years.
Well, to pay no taxes, technically, you didn't make any money. That means they wrote off enough stuff where they didn't make any money.
Yeah, it's all through the loopholes and exemptions and stuff that they get to.
Yeah, that's one of the problems is that the flat tax is difficult for me as a small business person. Like when I get in a car and drive somewhere, that's an expense to go meet someplace or buy a piece of equipment for a computer equipment or exchange server for my business. You have to be able to write that off because that's cost of services. If I buy a product or my manufacturer and I buy steel, I need to be able to write off the steel if I'm producing some steel part. Yeah.
I think we're not really well, we are, but I think the other factor you got to take into, and maybe Sam can remark about this, is that over the past 30 years, profitability has increased massively in the US. Internationally, the US worker is has some of the lowest paid vacation and other benefits. And a lot of this increased production has not been seen in the wages of the people that are producing it. It's gone up to the top 1%. And that is paid to these people not through direct wages, but through options, shares, non-earned income. And what has happened in Britain and America is that non-earned income, like shares, other kind of financial instruments, are paid at, their taxation is at a very lower rate than normal earned income. And Thomas Peretti, the French
capital gains tax is what you're talking about, right?
Well, dividends from shares, other financial instruments, the actual
capital gains. So it's taxed differently. It's a huge subject of the debate. Yeah.
And because most of the increase in the American economy has gone to the top, that those people receive that income not through direct wages, but through other financial instruments.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really fascinating if you start to think about the theory. You start to think about the way that economy works and money works. So what's interesting is that literally money grows money, right? So if you already have individuals that have a huge amount of wealth, right? That money grows money, and the systems in place enable that process in an exponential way. And so the divide between the poor and the rich is exponentially increasing always, because every single extra dollar you have, every single time you have a lower tax on investment than on income that people are using to pay for their livelihood, you're enabling that money to multiply at a faster rate than the poor can, for example, possibly ever increase their wealth. You know what I mean? So then what you end up with is, like, if you want to refer to Robert Reich, his documentary Inequality for All, he gives a really good visual of the wealth gap in the United States right now. And it's not entirely unprecedented. The only point in American history where we had a wealth gap like this before was right before the Great Depression. So if you look at the timeline of the wealth gap, it literally goes Great Depression, and then the New Deal down, Reagan, overturning Glass-Steagall, changing to, more Republican economic policy. And it goes up until 2008 right here. And has stayed at those high levels since. So,
well, one thing to think about before I finish up, and we'll get off this subject and finish up the iTunes or the podcast, is you still have to form capital. Businesses have to form capital to be able to create businesses and create things. Like whatever you might create, you need money to get going. I mean, I was in the military, saved up to start a design build construction company. We had to have capital to get going, or had to borrow or do something to get capital. So you have to have the ability for people to form capital and create businesses. And that's what the capitalist free market system is. I truly understand, though, but there's got to be some way of being people work because they're motivated to work. They want to feed themselves. They want to create. They want a better quality of life. So
That's one theory.
You know,
Karl Marx would disagree, but
I mean, that's how I grew up on in a capitalist. I come from a capitalist mindset that I want a better quality of life. I want
one way of thinking that maybe we are only motivated by income. Another way of thinking is maybe people want to be, productive. Maybe that is something in us that is natural, that isn't actually, created by capitalism.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sam, because I think that one of the essential part of human nature is the urge to express oneself. And that is being creative.
Hey, folks,
being productive
I'm going to cut you, Nick. I keep that top subject right. Keep that thought, because we're going to come back to it and let you talk. But what I want to do, this is a very good topic. I want to finish this up for iTunes. And folks, if you want to listen to the rest of the story, go over to Meet the Voter at meetthevoter.com and listen at about 30-minute mark. Come up on YouTube and listen to the rest of the story. So if you're on iTunes listening, go on over to the website and listen to the rest of the story. We're going to finish up iTunes right now. We're going to bring it right back into Nick's going to talk. And I think this is a good thing to talk about tonight, because I'm a capitalist, but I'm open-minded and I like to listen to folks. And I've got some theories I'd like to talk about. So Jonathan, anything? Want to say goodbye? Any final thoughts, Jonathan?
Well,
Short.
Well, taxation's a rather complicated. Obviously,
10 seconds.
Well,
Sam, anything you want to say? 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
I'm sure Hiri pays her taxation.
I don't know if I know things that take 10 seconds.
Nick, 10, 15 seconds. Final thoughts. Say goodbye.
Oh, goodbye, everybody. And
goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Go over to YouTube.
Record.
Okay, we're coming off the iTunes production. Interesting day today. But I really think this is an interesting topic, and it's a good discussion about, why people are some capitalists and why people are socialists and why people are communists. That's really what it comes down to in thought and process, and cronyism, all the different issues that apply. So, Nick, you were talking before on iTunes about that you think people are motivated for reasons.
Yeah, a natural instinct that everybody has, that is part of being human, is the urge to express themselves. And that expression is creativity. That's the urge to be creative or to be productive, as Sam put it. And another, nobody, I don't know anybody that doesn't have some sort of dream or some sort of plan. Maybe I'm not, everybody I know is trying to do something, and it's not always the urge to make money. They want to do something productive with their lives. But I also have one other question that you guys, that guy, whoever it was, Craig I am, wrote this: baby boomers are required by ERISA, ERISA, don't know what that is, to withdraw money from their DC plans. What is that?
It means that 59 and a half, you have to take a percent, or 70 years old, you have to start taking your money out, I think, of your IRA, all your different programs.
Oh, that's what the DC plans are?
I'd have to look. That's what I'm guessing.
Okay, because I didn't understand what he had to say.
ERISA.
Okay.
If you save your money, there's amazing stories of people who haven't made a ton of money, but they saved it and, like you said, invested, stayed out of debt. At the end of the life, they had lots of money. People who on nominal wages, because they were so frugal, saved up like $1 million, $2 million.
Well, what I think is interesting when I talk to people who are more on the right and who identify as capitalists and so on and so forth, I don't even particularly necessarily completely disagree with some things about capitalism. What astonishes me is that in terms of the research that I've done, how evident it is that no core concepts of capitalism are in play in the United States, that we live in an oligarchy. And so I don't understand how, like you're talking about small businesses, I guess, in general. I would think that more Republicans would be pissed off if they knew or if they acknowledged that the small and medium sized businesses are paying every cent in tax. It's another, a part of corporate socialism. It's a part of making it so that the major corporations are literally untouchable, that the divide between, the kinds of businesses that benefit us and benefit our families and stuff stay down and are made as difficult as possible, whereas major corporations aren't even participating in our economy at all. And so then to go from there to say like, but let's regulate them less, because hopefully like spontaneously they're going to decide to turn it all around and participate, just doesn't make any sense to me. How can that make – it's like Russell Brand. He said he was like, we're in this situation because of these major corporations taking advantage of our systems and our government, but let's deregulate them because eventually the greed will grow and explode and then just love will come out because he's a comedian. So he's like, but it's kind of the argument, it's like if we just regulate them less, eventually we'll get to the point where they decide to participate and to help the American people. So can you answer kind of or respond to that for me, Bill?
Well, what the thought is this is, I'm not talking about the deregulation, but on the concept of getting what you working for, get what you get. If I work 40 hours and do the same thing as somebody who works 20 hours, I should get twice as much as pay. That's the most basic capital concept. The more I work doing the same thing as you're doing at the same skill set, I should get twice as much. Because if I don't, I'm not going to work those extra 20 hours. I'm going to go hiking in the mountains. I'm only going to work 20 hours.
Do you think that's the core concept of capitalism? Because I think the core concepts of capitalism are a system of market economy where markets control the outcome of the system. So the idea being that if we don't regulate at all, then corporations, for example, a corporation that is unethical or greedy or whatever is going to fail, right? And it's going to be allowed to fail, whereas the sort of better corporations or more innovative or whatever are going to naturally succeed, and so on and so forth.
Well, that's just a very fundamental stepping stone, just to get a point across that's why I don't believe communism or even socialism works, because there's got to be motivation to work from all of us, whether self-employed or whether working for somebody, to get the benefits of our work, which should come back to us, not to someone else. So that's the very core concept. If I work 40, you work 20, I should get twice as much for doing the same, as long as I'm doing the same thing.
Okay, so like, for example, like recent, I'll say this comment and stop. But for example, like, because this just came out, okay? Because recently it was discovered, they've been watching this for a minute, but as of now, officially, the richest 62 people in the world are as wealthy as half of the entire world's population. So it's not that I fundamentally disagree with, and that actually their wealth increased by 41% in only the last 6 years. So we're really talking about something that's hasn't always been this way. It is happening actively, faster and faster and faster. So where I struggle is, how do you have that system and also stop corporations from taking advantage of governments and creating the kind of imbalance that we have?
Well, that's a good question, but
I think, Bill, that to tell you the truth, that socialism and capitalism are not diametrically opposed. I'm in favor of socialized capitalism because capitalism, left to its own devices, is a rape machine. And the socialism can't exist without capitalism. You got to have, some money being made, and I think that's really how we're operating right now. The whole United States. Look at the thousands of trucks that are taking care of the snow on the East Coast, and the National Guard comes out. There are so many socialized systems that we live in and have been for the whole time. And as far as taxes go, the time that the United States grew the most was after World War II. And the labor unions got strong during the war. And then the labor unions built a massive middle class. And the United States has never had a more productive period, up until the 60s. I mean, the middle class was strong. People were buying cars and homes. People weren't losing their homes and weren't going bankrupt. All the corporations were doing well. The corporations were paying about 90%, and they still grew and grew and grew and grew. And without a big, strong, hefty middle class, eventually the corporations are not going to have they're sucking their own blood out. And I don't believe that either capitalism or socialism alone can exist without the other. That's what I see.
Nick, I agree with what you said. If our founding fathers established a government at different levels, local, state, and then federal. But one of the theories I believe in, and as why I'm a Republican, and I'm probably a purebred Republican, more of a libertarian, is that government should only do those things that we cannot best do ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think as much
I have no argument with that.
As possible.
And one of the things that we can't do ourselves are control these corporations or the military-industrial complex. None of us can do that on our own. And we need regulation. It needs oversight.
That's what we define as crony capitalism. It's government, it's corporations in bed with government, creating special rules for just them. When I got
That's
on,
reality. That's reality. That's our current reality. I mean, can I ask just yes or no? Is there anyone here that does not think that that's our reality?
No, I think we all concur on that, but we different approaches. But the mechanism of the corporations, whether you're a local state, the mechanism is the corporations or the influence gets into government to control, the benefits, and that's the socialist. That's what scares me about socialism. If they try to do everything for everybody, it's going to take bigger government to do that.
That's not necessarily true, but I mean, afterwards, I would just like to hear one proposition of how to ring in, 83% of the American public believes that the American government is controlled by major corporations and entirely corrupt. 83%. So this is something that the majority of us agree on. And yet I'm interested in hearing one idea of how to reverse this that does not include, at least temporarily, different and heavier government. I don't see how else we could possibly go about reversing the effects of what has taken place. The American public has never been so poor.
Unless you're a public, unless you work for the government. If you have a government job, you make more than the average person, well more than the average, more than comparables for the most part, especially public employees and public safety. In Modesto, where I was from, I city council 6 years. Firefighters were retiring with $8,000 to $10,000 a month. That's a lot of money, and that's why a lot of your cities are going broke in California and across the country. So the government employees, if you've got a government job and you can do that in and out, to me, that's not a very creative type of job to have. But I mean, shoot. And the other thing too, if I have this socialist environment, how do you decide what if somebody doesn't want to work? What do you do with them?
Well, none of the other countries that have implemented capitalist socialism have experienced that issue at all. So I don't see why it comes back to the same argument. I thought it was interesting because, the viewer at JPEG to Raw, so he was talking about how he's hired and fired and, obviously is like an employer of tons of people, and that he has never observed that people work uniquely to make more money, So, I think that you're underestimating people. And I think that really, when we're talking about wanting to have a diverse, innovative economy, if we could start educating people and giving small businesses and medium-sized businesses opportunities to grow without like the crushing pressure of the monopolies that we have in place, then that's when you'd really see not only the American people thriving, but American level of education and innovation and really taking our place like in the global market. But with the capitalist, the corporate socialism that we have in place, that's not going to happen. Our legs are being cut off. Our young people can't, step up and do the things that they could do in face of such ridiculous, financial imbalance within our country and within the world.
Yeah. Anyway, I think the underlying core principle. So what do you think the underlying core principle of socialism? That the individual wants to be creative and will just work for work's sake, right?
No, that's a totally different topic. But
that's what
Well,
sounds like.
where I think you're going wrong, Bill, it'd be like me trying to say that whatever a capitalist or a free market, that's a very kind of broad statement. It's a bit, saying to somebody else, there's all types of socialists. There's all types that believe that in a certain level of, like we had before. I really see no quantifiable difference between the people of Nevada owing the Nevada Electric than some outside enormous corporation. I really don't see much
called public
difference.
Utilities.
No, I really don't. But there's other people there's other people who would call themselves socialists that really believe that a large part of the economy should be owned by the government. I'm not one of those that agree with that. I don't think anybody should have a large part of the economy. And I agree with most of what Sam has said. And I think most Americans would agree with what Sam has said. If you get away from this kind of emotional baggage around the word socialism, which I think is fostered by the media.
Here's something to think about. Think about a manufacturing company. Would you ever see a time when the government should be in a manufacturing business?
Well,
I mean,
I have a
doesn't
question.
really create anything. It provides services, but it doesn't create anything.
But Jonathan, I'm interested in your view on when you were talking about, public industries. So the way I've always interpreted that was in terms of the idea that some things are so valuable to the livelihood of a people that they have to be protected from corporate greed. So in terms of natural resources, healthcare, arguably law, education, and literally in the United States, we have none of those industries protected. And I think that we can talk about Flint, what's going on there. We can talk about the education, the level of education of the American public, about the healthcare, about what healthcare costs here, and pharmaceutical companies, and that we're running out of antibiotics because it's not financially interesting to develop them, and so on and so forth. Like, that's what I think of when I think of those, those industries that should be public. It's the things that we can't afford to have touched by greed.
Sorry, I lost what the question was.
I was trying to figure out the.
It was like a response, and I was wondering if you had a response, because your position, you were saying, was that you were not an advocate for certain industries or resources being controlled by the government. I'm saying this is why I think some should be. I was wondering.
Well, it really depends if what I've read about economics, that it's well known that if you don't have more than 10 to 12 players in any particular market, you are going to end up in some form a monopoly to some level. And the normal mechanics of free enterprise won't happen, basically. But some industries, like hospitals, electricity, because of the degree of investment, to have multiple players is not really economically viable or would really be the best utilization of resources. When you're in those kind of situations, you really got to look at more creative, regional kind of control organizations where people can have a say, because otherwise you're just going to end up with a monopoly which basically can charge whatever it likes. And basically that with electricity, this is why we have this we have a free enterprise corporation that bought the Northern Nevada major supply electricity. Yeah, it's regulated. It's regulated by a state board that has a so-called experts that look at the investment return and the profitability, and they are supposed to regulate the profitability of this private corporation. It's a rather bizarre setup, really. You know, I think it would be just easier for the people in Nevada to own it rather than the present situation. But that's my opinion. Did that answer any of your questions, Sam?
No, it did. I just still can't. I'm still not able to understand, because I feel like there's such an overwhelming body of proof that that way doesn't work, and that it has really horrific impacts on the lives of people. Even kills people. And like my first experience with that was I'm not sure if you're aware, but that the United States is the only nation in the developed world that doesn't negotiate maximum prices for pharmaceuticals and medications in the United States. So every single other developed country sits down with pharmaceutical companies when they want to bring their drugs into the country and decides with them upon the maximum price that they can charge for that, so that their people can receive, and they have them bid against each other and stuff. So they choose the company that's going to, and the United States is the only company that doesn't do that. So for example, like I had to get antibiotics without insurance here and right after I moved to France. So it was the exact same antibiotics, it turned out. And I went to Costco and paid $85, which was a lot for me at that time, for the prescription. And a few months later in France, paid $15 with no insurance for the exact same medication. So that's one of a million examples of, the real impact that comes from allowing for capitalism or
unfettered capitalism. Yeah, it's a rape. So, it becomes a rape.
That's Nick. That's why we do have, in the United States, we have different systems. In Nevada, the power company is basically going to be owned by Warren Buffett's company, Ashford Hathaway. But like you go into Los Angeles, you've got LA Power and Water, which was established in 1917. That's called a utility, a municipality. Am I saying it right?
Municipality.
It's the municipality utility in the United States, LA Power and Water. And it's just a system. They both work. But what works the best? That's the biggest thing. What delivers the best buck? Here's the other thing too. You're just about to have some amazing competition in this one area of power and power. Tesla is getting very, very close. If you stick with this, you're going to have batteries, these little batteries on the wall of your garage. You can have a few solar panels, and you're going to store power and use power. Store power, go back and forth, completely get off the grid. And that's it's too expensive now, but it's coming.
Small windmills too are going to be able to be attached everywhere. Even when there's no wind, if you put them at the hip of your roof, the air coming up or going down, if can give you a ton of power. There's so much free power around, but big oil is blocking out on every avenue.
Here's something I'm absolutely wait a second. Here's something I'm absolutely 110% opposed to: are the grain subsidies and to create ethanol for gas. Absolutely opposed to that. And that's ridiculous. That's been going on for years and years and years. It drives up the cost of milk. We have family who have dairies, the odds. It costs silage more. It drives up the cost of food because of what the stupid thing that the government forces on the oil companies or somebody to.
It was on bullspill. It was put through because those particular areas, the farming areas that benefit from those high prices, are generally Republican, and some of the leading amendments that were put forward came from the Republican Party.
The bigger government should never be in that business. It should be out of that business.
Why is
government in ethanol? Why are they there?
But I like to get back to Sam's point about drugs. Well, it really depends, Sam, because fundamentally, to research a drug is an expensive business. So what society has to decide is what kind of return a drug company should expect for its risk. Obviously, a drug company will have and its investors will have a very different idea about the kind of return they are justifiable. They are justified to ask, and society will have a opinion about what is a realistic return. So it's really a negotiation, but you also got to take in that you're dealing with ill people who are not in a position. It's not like a normal situation where you got a choice what you're going to buy. You're ill, so you don't have much say about buying the product or not buying it, because a lot of the time, if you don't buy the drug, you're not going to get well. So that has to be taken into. So there's a lot of factors going on there, and the other factor is if you make it very unattractive to drug companies, they won't spend the money on research. So then you might say that the government should finance research, which I'm not opposed to. A lot of people on the right would be, but the government spends a lot of money sponsoring research when it comes to defence, and there's no argument about government supplying gobs of money to defence companies. So, but it's really, you really got to look at various factors, haven't you, Sam?
I think it's interesting because, like, in the first thing that you were talking about, you were saying, that the drug companies are going to determine that the amount that they should make in profit is going to be. It's as though you assume that there's any limit to what they would want for their profit to be, which I would.
No, I'm not that naive. I'm not that naive.
Well, I mean, in the wording, you know what I mean? It was like they're going to be, that's what we want to make, and we'll stop there. It's like, it doesn't exist. It can go on forever. It's the sky's the limit. It's never ending greed. But beyond that, there's some interesting things going on. If you, you can look at an episode of Vice that was about the development of pharmaceuticals. That was really cool. So Vice is doing a lot of really cool political coverage with their show. And also there's a documentary, and I think it's called, what do you call it? A resistant or whatever. So the idea is the resistant bacteria that we can't, defeat with antibiotics. So in what has been claimed to be an unprecedented way, we're having bacterial infections that we can't cure with our antibiotics. And so it's interesting because why that's relevant to this is that for pharmaceutical companies, antibiotics only stay effective for a certain period of time, especially because of our overuse of them. So the last antibiotics that have been coming out on the market, some of them have only stayed effective for 3 years. So what's happening is that it costs, like you said, all of this investment in order to develop those antibiotics, and then they only last for a few years. And so the profit that the company can create off of the antibiotic is kind of marginal. So what's happening now is that pharmaceutical companies don't want to develop antibiotics. At the rate at which they're developing new antibiotics is becoming slower and slower and slower, to this point where a lot of people in the medical community are afraid that pretty soon here we're going to have this case where we can't cure these bacterial infections, because the research isn't keeping up with the bacteria. And it's just another example for me, something I think should be concerning to everyone, of how, in my opinion, there are things that should be protected from us. There are things that are more important than money. And in my opinion, whenever an industry like that is created for profit, a corporation is created for profit that is profiting off of people's lives, people's well-being, that's wrong. And I think that's maybe radical compared to a lot of Americans, but I don't think you should make money off of healthcare. I don't think you should make money off of developing medications. And I understand that, there has to be incentive to develop techniques and medications and things, but I think that there's other ways for us. I think people are motivated by more than just.
Well, It's a quite justifiable argument. There's nothing wrong with your arguments. I would not support that position. I'm a great believer in the National Health Service. I've lived under what Americans call socialist medicine, which is ridiculous. It's national medicine. It's a great institution, but it is not without its faults, Sam. And what its faults are is like, I would slightly agree with Bill's position. The National Health Service has become the largest employer in Britain. It is the largest pension fund. It has for a number of years been underinvested in by Labour and Conservative governments. It is very bureaucratic in its nature. Even those that work in it would tell you it is extremely bureaucratic. It is very slow to adjust to new treatments and new attitudes because it's a very large organisation. That's probably not down to it being a kind of, once again, utilise the American language, a socialist medicine. Also, standards are can either be really very, very good or extremely poor. And if you're one of the people suffering from the very poor standard of treatment you're getting from a particular area, you have very little choice. You could also argue in America that you have very little choice if you're below a certain income level. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. I personally prefer a more fragmented system that is controlled by state regulation but allows non-profit, regional cooperatives and a much more fragmented, non-centralised system, but still under strong central control to safeguard the consumer. But that's my position, Sam.
What about Nick?
Well, God, I was thinking so many things as both of you were chatting.
I'm sorry, Nick. I didn't mean to
I'd like to share a story. A few years back, I snapped a tendon on my big toe playing tennis. Man, it felt like a branding iron from my foot all the way to my knee. Anyway, I had to have an operation because my foot was flapping, and so I went in and they fixed the tendon up, and I picked up 2 bugs in the surgery suite. And,
dear.
Yeah, one was staph and the other was ringworm. And the ringworm was easy, that just some medicine and it went away. But the staph was not so much. And as I was healing, the doctor said, well, we're going to have to put you on another course of antibiotics. And so I took the second course and it didn't help. One little portion was still infected on my toe. And the doctor, with a big smile on his face, says, it looks like we may have to cut your toe off. And I was like, and you're smiling about it? I wanted to punch him. So then the second course didn't help. And he said, okay, I'm going to give you one more course and then, we'll have to do something else. Well, by that time I was pretty fed up. So I went to the pharmacy right down the street here, and I bought a bottle of tea tree oil for like $3.75, little bottle. And the doctor had been telling me to put a Neosporin on it and take these antibiotics. Every time I put the Neosporin on it, it stung and it never helped. And the antibiotics didn't help. So I stopped the antibiotics. I put the tea tree oil on it. And the first time I put the tea tree oil on, the stinging went away instantly. And within about 3 or 4 days, the pus just stopped. And when about a week later, I went to have another checkup, and the doctor said, well, how is it? And I said, well, it's healed. And he looked at me and he kind of grumbled and said, well, I'm glad you're healed, and kind of shook his head and walked out. And then I said, well, but why didn't you tell me that tea tree oil could handle this staph? Well, it's not clinically proven. And I just had to say, well, I just clinically proved it. It worked. And what happens with so much medicine and big pharma, whether you agree or not, Jonathan, that's what happened. And I've seen it, that there's natural ways that are dirt cheap and can keep and can fight. Look, every plant that you've seen, every plant that you know has lived for millions of years, had to fight off the same bacteria and funguses and viruses that we've had to. They've figured it out. These plants have survived. And now Big Pharma is acting like they're coming up with these miracle things that are failing, as you said. You know, they work for a minute and then they don't. But I believe that you can, through natural sources, fight all of these things off. And there's no need for this. If doctors would play along, you know, with and learn. You know, I know one doctor. He was the head of a ER at the same hospital where I had the operation, and he was a bass player in my son's band in college. Then he went to medical school, and when he got there, I asked him, because we'd have debates about nutrition. I asked him how much training he'd had in nutrition, and he had one semester in like 8 or 9 years. One semester. And
well, can I just say something about what you commented? First of all, I do agree. What I think you're saying at the end of what you were saying is there's no kind of integrated, kind of large look of the individual, their diet, other factors, and obviously in a pure money orientated system like what the American system, you're not going to get that. The only criticism and it's fantastic that your toe healed itself, and I think it's great that you did something about it. But unfortunately, I've got to put to you, what you're saying is anecdotal evidence. It worked for you. That's not scientific evidence. Scientific evidence is if you had 1,000 people with the same condition and you gave them the same condition, then another 1,000 people you didn't.
Jonathan, let me say something about that. I went in. Okay, excuse me, Sam. I'll just say this one quick thing. I went in and asked the pharmacist. So it wasn't just me. Okay, I asked the pharmacist, "Do you have any ideas?" And he said, a lot of people have great luck with tea tree oil for various infections. So now I've been using it for about a year now on my toes, and I can't believe my toenails are looking completely perfect. And there was some other systemic stuff that somebody wanted me to take that had all sorts of side, some really bad reactions. So it's not just me, Jonathan. It is millions of people that have tried this, and now you can read about it in holistic journals and all that kind of thing. You can read about the benefits of these various naturopathic healing things. So it's not just me.
Yeah, but Nick, I'm not I'm looking for the right word. I'm not disparaging about people's experiences, but I must put it forward, and then I'm going to let Sam say her piece. I'm sorry, Sam. But that's not. I'm sorry, Nick. That is not scientific proof. That is still anecdotal evidence. That is not based on the scientific method, Nick.
Well, the pharmacist was a scientist.
Can I answer something?
Yes.
I think that the gap in between you two is kind of where my position lies, but it's like, Jonathan, you're talking about what is or isn't clinically proven. I would see it more from the perspective of what is and isn't profitable to clinically prove. So if we go back to the AIDS crisis, for example,
now you're talking.
During the AIDS crisis, which I believe the government and the FDA were extremely complicit and responsible for a lot of deaths, in that situation. There was, have you guys seen, what's the movie called with, the Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club. Thank you. So, what that story is about how a true story about an individual who created this Buyers Club to get these non-regulated, what they were looking for were medications to help with AIDS, because nothing existed and the FDA wasn't putting anything out. And when something would come up, they'd say it's going to take us this amount of time, and people were dying a lot quicker than the medication was becoming available. And so at one point, that guy, I forget his name, but they were bringing in medication like vitamins and supplements from Mexico and South America and different places in the world. And the FDA went out of its way to ban those and make those illegal, even though some people were experiencing benefits from it, because they couldn't make any money off of vitamins and oils.
But you guys are the one that want government to take care of you.
Huh?
That's the government. FDA is the government. They said it wasn't good. That was the government.
No, I don't think anyone sitting here thinks that corruption in the government should be allowed to continue. That's a huge part of the problem as well. If we have corporations in the government, I'm saying that's what's the problem with the government. So why would we let the corporations do more? They corrupt the government.
You know, the healthcare thing is we've sort of been in healthcare. I want to talk about a couple other things about the free markets. In this,
I'm going to jump out for a minute, okay, guys?
Well, we can talk.
Let someone else come on.
That's fine.
Okay.
Go out all together. Or are you going to stay in? Okay. Hey, let me go back to a couple. Let's get out of healthcare for a while. Some other issues. We could talk about lean healthcare in another episode. We can put that in. In fact, we could schedule in the topic. But the topic is like, how much government do you want to put up there? I want to. One of my favorites is Simon Sinek. I listened to one of his TED speeches. And he gave an example of the Wright brothers and Langley. Langley was a hybrid. He went to Harvard, professor, Naval Academy instructor, civilian. The government gave him lots and lots and lots of money, big studies and stuff. You know what's about on Langley, what he did? Basically, around the turn of the century, the government funded him to try to create an aircraft or plane that would fly, on its own. He put tons and tons and tons of money. And to get out ahead of the Europeans and all this stuff, the government made this program. Well, the Wright brothers, who were bicycle owner shop, had a passion to create this flight. And that goes back, Nick, to your passion. They did it without government. They did it by themselves. And they were the first to fly, because they would go out there, patch stuff up, crash, and they'd spend hours and hours and hours. They didn't limited people they hired. They were it was true. I think that's the spirit of the capitalist system of creating and doing it yourself without government. And that was the Wright brothers. I think there's no better example than that one example. Now, going to the moon, look what's happening now with private sector is coming in and creating all these delivery systems, that work. We did go to the moon with government. That's a different thing.
Can I intervene? I know you aimed that at Nick. I do, I'm sorry, Bill. I think I do understand where you're coming from, but I also think this is a very romantic view of whatever is called free enterprise. Of course, it's got its great achievements, Bill, but also it's got its great failings. And the reason why that, you won't find any system based on human beings that is perfect in any shape or form, because people aren't perfect. So the systems they produce aren't perfect. Right. So, but I must say to you that I feel that you tend to overemphasize the benefits of what you call free market, but you aren't prepared intellectually to look at the reverse side, which isn't very attractive as well.
Franklin said it best. I'm not we want some government. Franklin said it best. Government is like fire. It has to be controlled by the people and not the special interests. So you want limited government. Government, like I said, government that's closest to the people. That's one of the theories. You want government that's as small as it's possible. Only do those things that we can't best do ourselves. And you got to decide that. And then I think the spirit of freedom will go much further than government, because government is regulation. Government is controlling your life. Ultimately, government controls your life at the point of a gun, believe it or not. So if you violate the laws, do things, they have the ability to take a gun and point it at you and put you in jail. That's the ultimate authority of government. I can't do it as a private person, put anybody in jail. Only government can do that. So that's the ultimate power you got to balance there. So I just don't have a lot of hope that government can solve a lot of my problems. I think my problems are best solved by myself, my family, and working up from there, the local government, and then going up. That's just limited. And if we have limited government, we wouldn't have this $21 trillion debt we have right now that could put us in a hole. Now, when it comes to healthcare, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. That's a tough one to answer. I mean, what did they do 200 years ago for healthcare?
Well, they died young and they suffered.
Yeah, well, not Ben Franklin would be pretty old.
For the most part, people, ate crap. That's what, without these safety nets, that's what people do. They die and they suffer. And that's why
I think we're living
these
longer there because of medicines and evolution of health and in some aspects.
Yeah, diet and then people
science
explaining how we really work.
In Afghanistan, they still 43.
Well, they won't be living that much longer in Flint, though, will they, Dick?
Oh God! Oh, that is so sad.
See, Bill, that's free market.
Wait a second. No, that was the government. That was the city government that made those decisions. Right?
No, it was a state government.
I want to make this really clear.
That was the state. That was the government that made those decisions, right?
Yeah, it left. It was right in Snyder's. He made the decision. He and his people did that. It wasn't the people of Flint, and they put in somebody.
Government elected officials that made those decisions. Private sector. It was all government.
Well, the people elected.
Are you really
no,
saying
Jonathan, was that no corporation did that? That was all private sector, right? I mean,
it was government. No, the government was trying to wreck a private corporation.
That's what I'm saying. That's why the government. We don't want government to be big.
The point I was trying to make, Bill, is the normal normal representative system in that area had been suspended, and the governor had put a non-elected bureaucrat in control over the top of the normal democratic system. And secondly, the other point I want to quickly make, there's been loads of evidence of corporations that have done poisoning, other similar things. There's they're no more better than what has happened in Flint.
Oh, Monsanto, of course. Hey guys, I have something to ask about that I've been watching this week, and it kind of has to do with healthcare, and it kind of has to do with market regulation and that kind of stuff. That is the marijuana revolution.
There's another example. That's government controlling your life by saying marijuana is bad. You can't have it. That's your.
Well, no, but that's finally reversed itself.
Huh?
Do you think Sarah Palin's taking
the federal government says it's illegal to smoke marijuana anywhere, even in California? Even medical marijuana is illegal from the federal government standpoint.
Yeah,
your government saying you can't smoke marijuana, you can't buy it, you can't do it, you can't do it. But California says, "Oh, we'll let you do it." Technically, that's still illegal.
Well, on a federal level, but Obama says he instructed the DOJ to. Yeah, but he's instructed the Department of Justice to not. Okay, to not.
Done that, but still, the laws are on the books.
Yeah, right. But what's happening, because I saw this on CNN a couple of episodes, and watching how it's suddenly across the board, they're singing the praises. They're talking about how the evidence now is showing that dementia can be turned around, and the symptoms totally degraded by cannabis drops or smoking. Smoking is not really good for you because of the carbon and the free radicals that you get. But you can vape, or you can take drops, right, or do edibles. And right now it's becoming mainstream. And we heard we have a brand new police chief. Well, 6 months old now in Laguna Beach, and there was a meet and greet when she first came to town, and it was one of the major things that we heard. She said, "Okay, Laguna, I want to tell you something. The days of getting busted for marijuana are over in Laguna." Now that's part of the government saying that what the feds say is wrong, or whatever, because she said, if you have a lot of it, we might take it. Then again, we might not. But now in Laguna, people are walking down the street. Okay, vape pipes are everywhere, and these people, they're taking a big puff and then smiling away, and the medical marijuana people, like I'm having a little problem right now with a hip. I'm about to have a small hip tune-up operation, but it's not a replacement, so it's not a big deal. Well, I didn't smoke for several weeks, and because I just didn't think about it, it wasn't so interested, and somebody gave me some, and I took a puff, and instantly, I mean, like in less than a minute, the pain was half of what it was. Now, there's a lot of people, veterans, disabled people, people with mental issues, all across the country that are going to have amazing benefits from this stuff. And I think
you're not going to like me, Nick. But I do love you, Nick. You're a great guy. But once again, and I want to make it quite clear that I'm totally for the legalization of all drugs. But I knew loads of people in London that their lives were ruined by that drug.
Marijuana?
Their mental capacity over the years had been totally wiped out.
I think it was other things. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do that, Jonathan. And look at the research. It doesn't do it, buddy. Sorry, it doesn't do that. It helps. I can show you study after study that shows what great. And a part of the show that I saw last night, there were so many vets who were showing up at council and state board meetings and all that, singing the praises how it gave them their lives back.
You know what, Dick? They're going to government. You want more government? You're going to always have to go to your government to ask permission to do something. That's the example of the people having to go to the government to get permission to smoke marijuana. That's not freedom. Bill, that's government control.
Two things there.
I mean, that's why I don't like socialism. That's another. You just answered one of the things why I don't like about government. Government does have to regulate some things. For example, I'm going to talk about government needs to do those things. Like I can't do something that I can't punch you in the nose. The government's got to stop me from doing that to some extent, or punish me for doing that. So I can't do things to hurt other people per se, or violate, or be stoned and be driving down the freeway, or be drunk, or anything like that, cause of death. That government.
You're much safer being stoned than you are drinking.
Well, they're both are bad when you're driving.
Not really.
Anytime you lose
Nick, I do. I like to answer both of you. I like to answer both. I like to answer both of you, but I'd like to start off with Nick first. First of all, I've just given some anecdotal evidence. I'm not saying it's right. I personally haven't read any scientific papers that just supported your statements. But I would say that what I've just said is anecdotal. It's not scientifically proven. But before you made statements about the benefit of that drug, which, as far as I'm concerned, are totally honest but anecdotal. They're not based on scientific proof. And you've made about at least two statements about two treatments, which you're being totally honest about. I'm not saying that you're being not honest in what you're saying, Nick, but you link anecdotal evidence with scientific evidence. And I think I've got to point that out to you. Now, when it comes to Bill, you say that, but the war on drugs was started by your beloved Mr. Reagan. He's the one that brought in this ridiculous notion that America should have some war on drugs. He's the one that put Mr. Free Enterprise, Mr. Liberty, was the one that put in these regulations that's seen millions of Americans put into prison.
Actually, in 1971, Richard Nixon declared war on drugs.
Yes, it was Nixon and then Reagan. And then Reagan, as a response to what was seen as the crack epidemic in Los Angeles.
Nancy Reagan.
Just say no.
Their attitude towards that bill. They're the ones
to put out a thing like you shouldn't be doing. It's good for the government to say, no, you shouldn't be doing these things. You shouldn't be doing that. There's fine there. That's not a war on drugs. Saying you should not be doing crack. You should not be doing those things. That's another thing. How do you handle? Here's the thing. At what point does government tell people they can't have crack, or has a responsibility to make sure that they don't get crack?
What Reagan did was what the administration and the politicians of that time did was even more horrendous and racist than that. What they did was create a sentencing ratio of 1 to 100 between powdered cocaine and crack cocaine in order to incarcerate the vast majority of young Black men in America, who a lot of which are still serving time today, and that's still affecting that community today. So, I mean, afterwards, like, I personally, like, I think everyone here knows, like, I'm entirely abstinent from drugs and alcohol, but I have a hard time even talking about any kind of risk with marijuana and not acknowledging the rampant social destruction of alcohol in our community. I think that
Pharmaceutical
even
drugs,
if you could say, and I know people who are, you know, who are experiencing major health problems from smoking marijuana, like Nick specified, that, yeah, the risks of smoking it are way different than taking it in a different form.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you look at what alcohol does to our culture, like, I don't know why that's always just seen as being different. I mean, personally, like, I think cigarettes, I don't think, and I will admit that I smoke cigarettes from time to time, but I honestly, hey, I'm working on it. But, you know, the idea that that is legal, you know, when we know that it literally serves no purpose, and it's killing so many people, and yet because of money and stuff like that, you know, does it surprise anyone else that when we found out scientifically, like, we understood completely that cigarettes are killing people in a ridiculous way, that the government didn't ban cigarettes, that was, like, surprising?
Yeah, but this
That's
is
a
the point.
question.
But this is the point I'm making, Sam. Is, if you're totally right, but banning, I just do not. I don't agree with drugs. But if people want to take, if they want to smoke, if they want to drink, if they want to, they're adults, and it's their choice. I think the government should make it really clear that this ain't good for you, and we're not going to we're not making it into an enormous business for the corporates. But
Okay.
you know, but banning stuff, it was, you know, what has been a disaster for this country? What was a disaster in the 1930s was trying to ban alcohol. And what has been a disaster for this country is trying to ban all these other drugs.
Can I have to leave in a second, but just to say, like, I'm not in favor or opposed to banning. What I think that cigarettes stand apart because I think that once it's been understood, and from a smoker, when you understand that nicotine is so addictive that it is no longer the choice of the individual, whether or not they participate in that behavior, that they enter into smoking at a young age when you don't really understand. I think most people, that's their story. And that the drug itself is so powerful, but that you can only become so physically addictive that the majority of smokers will never be able to quit in their lifetime. You know what I mean? And that it is likely, there was just a report research recently that was published talking about how now they're showing that cigarettes are so much more deadly than they ever thought they were before, that literally the vast majority of smokers will die from it. And that's where I think there's a huge difference, because now people aren't being able to make their own choice. You know, the way I see it, I didn't choose to become a smoker. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 15 and didn't know any better. And this dangerous, lethal, ridiculously addictive product was allowed to be, you know, given, you know, be in this society. And now I'm trapped in something that I don't think I'm entirely responsible for. You know, not that I'm not the only one who can do anything about it. That's obviously the case. But I would hope for a government that makes that distinction.
Well, all I can say to you is that my own mother died from smoking. It destroyed her body, and she died a very unpleasant death. And I saw her die that way. But it was her. But I'm sorry. I really, you know, I don't believe banning. All you would achieve is make it a legal drug, and you'd make the Mexican cartels even more wealthy because they would smuggle cigarettes, and that's all you would achieve. And fundamentally, yes, you know, I don't know how addictive tobacco is compared to cocaine or heroin or a number of other drugs.
It's arguably more.
I haven't read the scientific.
Jonathan, I can tell you that there's more drugs or more deaths from cigarettes,
of course there is.
All the other drugs put together.
Yeah, of course there is, but I'm talking about its addictive qualities. I haven't read the research, so I'm not going to pass a comment on that. But all I say to you is that I'm sorry, I still think there is a choice. I think even how addictive you are on something, you still fundamentally at the core of your psyche have a choice. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not passing what a lot of people would say a moral judgment, because I'm not. I'm making no moral judgments about people. It's all right for people to throw stones. They need to look at their own consciences first. But I just do not believe in telling adults that they shouldn't do something, no matter how dangerous, as long as it don't damage other people. If you want to kill yourself through some addiction, I think you got the right as an individual to kill yourself.
Okay, so what's the difference between real quick, because I have to leave, but so Susie said, Sam, you're not trapped. You make the choice to smoke. Once again, I feel like as an individual, I am responsible for my own actions, which I think is proven by the fact that I'm physically sober in every other way. And it's not, I think that we're left to deal with the consequences. However, I think that this goes into the realm more so, the issue of cigarettes. It's more like, regulating the use of lead. You know what I mean? It's like when you're talking about these like toxic substances that the government then comes into play to say that we can't let people use this stuff. I think that cigarettes, the effects of it put it on that level, as opposed to maybe something like alcohol or marijuana, where the health impacts are so variable and are so much less than cigarette smoking.
I think
that when we know, like, some respect for like medical science, when we know that something is so physically addictive that a person is not going to be able to quit on their own, I don't think that makes it their choice in the same way that you guys are identifying it.
Well, I am, but I think you've the beginning of your argument, I would take that where I agree with you, where tobacco smoking might be different to other forms of addiction, is the effects on others in inhaling that passive smoke, because a lot of people have got lung cancer and long-term health consequences in working casinos, in other places where they weren't actively smoking themselves, but they inhaled smoke from other people, and that was argument. But fundamentally,
Bye, Sam. Love you.
Bye.
Sam, good discussion, and I hope to see you back next Sunday night. I think it's going to be more lively.
I'll see you next week, guys.
Hey, we had a health attorney on. We had an attorney on just a second ago. Hopefully he came in.
Orange
County.
Bye, Suze.
Hey, one thing, Nick, think about this is when it goes back to my theory on government. Government should only do those things we can't best do ourselves. Sam used an example I didn't think was a good example. She was talking about banning lead in pipes, things of that nature, which we know is bad. Yeah, because that's common use. The water in the pipes, the lead is not banned. It just can't be used in pipes and in solder, because we know that is dangerous, and there's other solutions that solve that problem. Smoking is an individual choice. It's not an individual choice when I turn the tap water on and get water. That's something that's supplied, and it's relied on a lot of different people. So I wouldn't want the government to ban smoking. But then at some age, like 18 and under, you can't smoke or buy cigarettes. That's I think that's okay in my book.
What I would like to see the government do is spread the scientific information as to the reality of what happens if you start to smoke, and get the information out. In China, they have a big problem. Well, they do it, but not that. I mean, I see kids on the corners smoking all the time. You know, I look at the beach and I see kids on the corners and I'm like, oh my God, didn't somebody give them the information as to what this is doing right with every puff? And, you know, in China, for instance, the cigarettes, you know, they've got a terrible problem with smoking over there. You know, the populace is really enamored with it's the tobacco industry's biggest market is China. But on the cigarette packs, you should see the pictures they put, you know, people with holes in their throats and people emaciated and warnings, you know, the whole pack. There's no, you know, a nice little camel with a sexy lady or, you know, none of that. It's every single bit of the packaging is saying, screaming out, this is going to kill you. This is going to kill you. And hopefully.
And you know something, Nick, the evidence I've read, it's totally ineffective because people think, especially younger people, think it won't happen to them. It's going to happen to somebody else.
Yeah, that's sad because it's a terrible killer.
It destroyed my mum. My mother had a terrible ending, but you know, and she was in total self-denial. For over 30 to 40 years, she smoked from 3 to 4 packs of cigarettes.
Jeez.
And it totally destroyed her in the end. And it was a terrible death that she had.
Yep.
But I still wouldn't ban it because fundamentally, as soon as you ban it, it becomes an illegal drug. And like I said,
yeah, I agree.
It just end up with the Mexican cartels with another product which they can make gobs of money on. And I just don't agree with all this banning of stuff.
I agree with you.
But on the other hand, I don't believe that gas stations should sell alcohol. I was totally shocked that in this country they allow gas stations to sell a drug that if you take it, you're going to kill somebody, and I don't agree with that. That's where I feel the government should act, because it's totally illogical to allow a gas station, to my mind, to sell a product that if you consume it, you're going to kill somebody with it. I just don't agree with it.
It's gas stations are like convenience stores around. They're close to get, you know, beer, alcohol. And I say I'm not with you, Nick, on that. Cities can do that, by the way. Cities can make a decision.
Well, me.
Alcohol, alcohol. We did that in Modesto when I was a council.
It's Jonathan's fault.
No, it's a vote. But I'm saying I don't really agree with that because, again, individual responsibility. I mean, shoot. Hey, you know, what's really sick, I don't know if you've ever been up to New Hampshire. They have a law. I think they've got their own packaging stores and they're on the highways and you can drive in and they're owned by the state. So all the alcohol is sold by the state. They've got very regulated processes.
Oh yeah, Virginia too.
It's right on the highway. Yeah, on the East Coast. They've got the blue laws. If you're much more strict against alcohol out west. But there's some weird rules out there. I mean, you can't drink after 2:00 in California in the morning. That's an idea to stop drunk. Hey, I want to talk about one last thing. I want to tell you how government in Nevada costs a lot of people to lose their lives because of what they did on Uber. Let me explain this. This report came out this week, and this is a good way to finish. Uber was held out from coming for a year. They came in and they were kicked out by the government for a year in California. Uber's been in about a year now, and all the states, all the places that have allowed Uber, in Nevada specifically, DUIs have gone down by 25%, and deaths caused by DUI because people are using Uber to pick people up and, you know, get them and not when they're drunk and just get them there faster and quicker. Now that was not allowed. Uber was kicked out because the taxi cab companies, primarily in Las Vegas, were so powerful against city council that they did not allow Uber to come in. Same thing. And then the state, then there's some, you know, decisions made. And finally, the state assembly and Senate voted to not allow the cities to have that regulation and allow Uber to come in. So now we have Uber and they're saving lives. But that's an example of government with special interest hooked in, being the taxi cab companies, keeping the individual from having something that's good.
Hey, I agree with Bill. Listen, I have to go, but I did want to say something.
Greg, what's up? You're new, real fast.
What's going on?
Hey, what do you want to talk about? Real fast before you go. Then Nick has
let's talk about Trump.
Trump?
It's killing him.
Okay. But I'm going to step out, Greg. Good to see you, but I just wanted to tell you guys that, I told you before I was opening a gallery.
Yeah.
Okay. We just acquired yesterday by a complete fluke a second gallery, and it's on. Could you turn that down a little bit?
Nick, all you have to do is just hit the little X after him.
Okay.
Just X him so you can talk.
All right.
I did that so it doesn't go to the main feed.
Okay. So we acquired a gallery right on Coast Highway, down right off of Broadway, right at Main Beach. So do you know Laguna Beach at all, Jonathan? Bill does.
Not really. Not that much.
So now we're going to be opening two at once, and it's going to be Woods Cove Fine Art South and Woods Cove Fine Art North, one on Main Street, and that's why I didn't get a chance. I'm incredibly busy at the moment working two galleries, but thank you for allowing me to do this, and looking forward to seeing you guys next week.
Is the same guy funding the gallery? It's good to hear what's going on.
Yeah. Oh boy, and he is stretched thin too. But the opportunity, there is a painter in there right now who's been selling dozens of paintings for 20, 18,000, 20,000, like that. And she lucked out and got a bigger gallery up the street, and so she's turning that gallery over to us. And it's right in the middle of the tourist section of town, completely ready to go. Really beautiful. So I've got 5 internationally known artists, award-winning artists, to show in there, and
Nick,
I'll keep you upgraded.
Nick, real fast, think of capitalism. Think of my concept of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Artists are probably the most capitalist people out there, per se. Not all artists, but I mean, the galleries are capitalist in nature.
Absolutely.
Who regulates? I mean, you don't want the government regulating what you can charge.
Yeah, but once again, Bill, I think you're making a jump here that somehow Nick and me are totally against what is called capitalism or what is called free enterprise, whatever that bloody means. I really don't know. You keep making this jump that somehow that both me and Nick, and I'm speaking for Nick, but I'm sure before you go, Nick, you can say this. I have worked for myself since the age of 24, Bill. I am totally for people working for themselves and people running their own business. What's your position, Nick?
Oh, well, yeah, I've been working since I was 14, and I've had several businesses. Now, luckily, in the businesses that I did have, I always had a partner who took care of all the taxes. That's why I really didn't know much about the tax thing we were talking about. But I believe that neither socialism or capitalism can exist without one another, and I believe that it's necessary, and that is how the world is run. And so I think that we need to get, like you said, Jonathan, get rid of the fear of the word socialism, and like some liberals fear the word capitalism, and we are both. We are both, and we need to accept that and improve.
I think the point is
the two areas work together.
How much government do you want in your life?
Well, that's what we need to do. We need to
no
improve.
Government over here, pure capitalism. You got communism over here. How much? If we're Bernie, you're going to have more government, so you're going to push it over here to the more government side. That's what socialism is.
Well, I think that is the honest debate that people have to make, and it's a totally honest. I want capitalism with a human face.
I want capitalism with justice, and that's what Bernie will bring. Bernie has never said he wants to hurt any businesses. He wants everybody to pay their fair share. He is a capitalist himself. He's not just a socialist.
I thought he's been in government quite a bit of the time.
I think what will happen is justice, and that's what whatever we need to do with either these terms as they are married, and we need to adjust them so that there's more justice for everybody. To me, socialism means social justice, and I got to get going, fellas. It's been great.
Thanks,
good
Nick.
to see you, Bill. Good to see you, Jonathan.
Thanks,
Thank you.
I love the green. Nick. I love the green.
Stay on 20 minutes, Jonathan. Everybody wants to pop up.
Yeah, all right, Bill.
This socialism thing's kind of interesting because I know you and I lead towards libertarian concepts and ideas, which are good. And libertarians don't want big government.
I don't want big. Well, you keep. I do not want some bureaucratic monstrosity telling me everything I should do. But doesn't mean that I don't want effective government. And the idea that you're going to, at the present moment, everybody knows that the tail is wagging the dog. The only effective way to get control over these large banks and these large corporations is through strong national government. That's the only force that's going to effectively get some control over these crony capitalists. That's the only thing that's going to get any control over them.
You know, that's interesting that you say that, because capitalism is when the government, I mean, socialism, at some point they actually own the corporations. And if you look at a lot of the nonprofits,
we got reverse. We've got quasi reverse socialism. We've got the actual corporations at the present moment own the government. We got the reverse. That's why, and I think I do understand your position, but I do feel you need to think about it, because we're in a very perverse, unusual situation where it's actually the corporations that own the government, where normally it is the government that owns the corporations, which is the classical where people on the right, or people the language of the right, say that is a monstrosity. And to some extent, I can see where you're coming from. But unfortunately, we've got a very perverse swapping of roles at the present moment in America, where the corporations actually own the government.
The corporations own the government. Yeah, the special interest in the government.
Why do you think the banks give Hillary Clinton $300,000 to listen to that bore for an hour? Would you give her $300,000 to listen to that idiot for an hour? Of course you wouldn't. You're giving her $300,000 because you own her. That's why you're giving her $300,000, isn't it? Yeah. You don't have to be a jet scientist to know that one, do you?
Hey, Jonathan, I was on, you know how Google brings up the definitions, sort of defined definition on that link. Let's do a, since you and I are techies too, when you're doing research, you're looking at something. I was trying to find the source of this definition of socialism. I think words have meaning, and you have to define when someone says socialist what it means. And this to me is probably the fundamental meaning of socialism right here. Which the link is there, but it says a political and economic theory of social organization that advocates the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. And it started about 1830s. That word socialism, it grew, became popular in 1880s. It comes from French to French and English, and it's evolved, and it was popular in the 50s. It's less popular now. It's probably coming back in popularity.
Yeah. I just want to state for you and other people that's still listening to it that you are totally correct. But to me, that is, you're talking about a philosophy that has from one side to the other. For I would not, as a democratic Christian socialist, advocate that all major forms of the economy be under social control, and that social control would be either parliamentary or the democratic system that applies here. I wouldn't be for that. I believe in a mixed system, and that system should be regulated by the people of the country for the benefit of America and of the world. America does not live. I'm sorry, folks. I know it's a big country, and you got two big oceans either side, so you feel. But unfortunately, we live in a world that's getting smaller and smaller. And we live in a world community, so we have to play our role as well. as good citizens of the world. But I don't believe that the state should just own things just for the sake of owning them. Right. Yep. So fundamentally, I do agree with your statement. What I agree with is that we don't allow the state just to own everything because it can do or it wants to do. But there are times where the state must act to protect the common good. Otherwise, you will just end up with a fascist corporate dictatorship. And fundamentally, I think we both know, Bill, that most of the politicians at the present moment have been bought. Most of the national politicians, they get their money from corporate America. And if somebody gives you a load of money, they want something from you, don't they, Bill?
You asked me a question, a double question there. No, some people, you know what? Some people do give money. I've given money to politicians, not for access, because I believe in what they believe in. So there are people who do give money based on belief. Yeah. I've done that. And then there's also special interests that buy their way into things. And there's also special interests that I like. I mean, not the favoritism, but somebody who's a smaller special interest.
A corporation, individual
corporations.
But a corporation does not give gobs of money to a politician because they believe. A corporation gives gobs of money to a politician because they want something from that politician.
They're limited to how much they can give. I agree, but they do it also. There's also these the PACs.
Well, they get around it because she gives them an hour speech and she gets $300,000.
When she's not in politics, right. Yeah.
Well, they're not giving her $300,000 to listen to her words of wisdom about Libya.
It's perfectly legal to say that if you want to become a politician, that once you become a politician, you cannot accept gifts, bribes, or anything for a period of time after you get out of being politics. That's what we do. Those laws are totally acceptable to do things like that. And I'd love to figure out ways to take the money out of the system.
And then we've got this perverse situation of like the Food and Drug Administration and a number of other administrations where we've got this revolving door. The people that are supposed to regulate the system leave, go into the companies which they're supposed to be regulating, then they come back and then they get another job in these bureaus and then they go back to the corporation again. It's like a revolving door. Well, they're not representing the people that they're supposed to be representing.
And it has nothing to do with capitalism either. That's just government.
Well, no, that's corporate government. That's large corporate entities who own government.
Right. That is something to think about. So I don't know how we're going to come to a conclusion there. I think that's why Trump is so popular right now. People think he's an outsider, and Bernie Sanders.
I think you're totally spot on there, Bill. I think a lot of the people that support Trump haven't logically come to that. It's more of a feeling in their psyche that they know that there's something really awful going on. And what that awful process is, Bill, is corporate owning government. And this has been seen before, Bill. This is not unusual. This was seen under Teddy Roosevelt, where he was dealing with the large oil companies and the Rockefellers and the other large corporate entities. And action under Teddy Roosevelt was taken, and the Supreme Court said that these corporate entities had to be broken up, and Standard Oil had to be broken up, and other monopoly corporations had to be broken up. So it's not something that unusual. It's happened before in American history, Bill.
Right. We've read the monopolies. We know some of the things that evolved. But hey, on a different discussion at the end here, and Rob is up. Anybody want to jump up? To make this, as this evolves, because this is the end of football season, we got the Super Bowl coming up next.
I'm off if you're talking.
If you're talking political season, well, let's try to. I think to make this more interesting. I mean, we should have it. I like the topic, and we develop the process, but somehow we need to get interesting guests on to come up and talk to the people. Now, this is recorded, but you know what's amazing is on this platform how few. I haven't seen any politicians per se come up on it. Have you?
Well, they can't make any money from it, can they?
A lot of people run for politics not for money. I know it cost me a small fortune to be a councilman and vice mayor.
No, I was being sarcastic there. I really don't know, Bill. Maybe they're busy trying to get some strategy to get elected, Bill.
How about the ones that are already elected?
Oh, I don't know, but so what do you, to finish off, Bill, what do you think if Trump wins? Yeah, I know you think, and you've been in politics, so you're more of an expert than me. But let's say Trump does win both Iowa and New Hampshire, whatever. What will be the reaction of the Republican Party, Bill?
That's a good one. So what do I think? I think the Republicans in Northern Nevada will be all excited and happy that I can see. Not all of them, but a good number of them. There's a lot of support here.
No,
I think at the national level, there are, you see right now at the who knows who's putting up the spin right now. It's been a crazy election to see Bush go down in flames like he has.
Do you think he is totally finished?
Bush? It appears that way.
Yes.
What do you think?
I really cannot
like
see
3%,
him recover.
3 to 6%.
I cannot really see him recovering. But what I mean, do you, apart from Bush, who I do think is finished, do you see any of the other candidates having any ability to take on Trump at the present moment?
And it's really weird. Somebody gets close to Trump, Trump attacks him and destroys him. If a normal candidate destroyed somebody, they would turn against him and people would go against him as being mean and a bully. But this isn't happening this time. Normal campaigns, if anybody did what Trump has done, they would be 3%. He comes across strange. He's not the guy, folks. He's not the guy to vote for. Trump, like you said, the Mussolini, the strongman, the experience. I mean, he may be a great.
The Duce.
May be a great builder.
The Duce.
And a good businessman. But who knows? You know what? We may all be wrong. He may become president, clear out things, and get things done. But I don't know. I sure don't want what we've continued to have. I'm absolutely disappointed in Obama for sure. I did a show this week, and it was a Canadian, and she said, I look at the quality of a person's family around them as the quality of the person and do elected office. Well, look at Obama. He's got a great family. But I haven't liked his policies and the people that he's appointed in office.
What you need to clarify is that I actually, when we're talking about domestic policies, I really don't think he really has done much, really. The health reforms, you can argue one way or another. I think a lot of the argument around the health reforms has been, I'm trying to find the right word in there, rather futile and, much about nothing in some ways.
No, we do have a new program now. I mean, I'm in a strange situation because the military, TRICARE, and some other things kicking in. But our policies that we've had have gone up 30-40% in my family, which is relatively healthy.
Well, that's substantial, isn't it?
$600 or $700 a month for 2 girls and my wife.
I feel that most of your criticism, I'm only surmising this, but I get the feeling that most of your criticism about Obama has been about foreign affairs and about his position in dealing with another of external situations. Would that be correct?
Yeah, well, I think his foreign policy stinks. And I think that Hillary Clinton did a terrible job as Secretary of State. I worked underneath that platform of several Secretary of States. Gates was my favorite to work under. Gates.
What would be your main criticism of the Obama-Clinton?
The biggest thing was the way they pulled out of Iraq. The way we went into Iraq, the way we pulled out of Iraq were both wrong. That you just don't leave a country after doing what we did to it without any type of fundamental infrastructure and systems. And you need at least 10,000 troops on the ground in Iraq to stabilize it for a period of time. I mean, they just pulled out. He says, we're going to pull out 100%. They pull out 100%. 100%. They left 110 soldiers there in the green zone to protect the embassy. And now you have ISIS. So that was pretty stupid. After all the people died, that was a very stupid plot. And everyone, all the generals, all the folks I'm around, I'm a West Pointer. All my classmates, not one of them told, the State Department wasn't listening to the boots on the ground, the people grabbing information. Afghanistan, they've changed a little bit. We've got about 10,000 people there now. So we've tried to stabilize. That's even a harder country to control, Afghanistan, believe it or not.
No, I don't. Of the British experience and other foreign countries' experiences, I really think it was a hopeless cause to some extent. I think the idea that you could stabilise with the kind of neighbours that Afghanistan and the regional power dynamics of that area, the idea that America could really if you want to utilise that term, stabilise, was a bit of a fallacy, because fundamentally all the players around Afghanistan know in the end America will have to leave at some stage, and they're neighbours, so they're never leaving. So that fundamental fact will never change, Bill.
No, Afghanistan's a tough place. It's more internal than external on Afghanistan, with the tribes and the culture and the religion and the Taliban. The Taliban are nasty people.
Well, I do kind of see classic regional power, the Iran, Pakistan, all the players that surround India, China, all the players that surround Afghanistan. To me, it's a classical Russia. It's a kind of classical regional power play, mixed with internal tribal forces as well. So I never could see how America was ever going to really get much from staying there, really, to the extent they decided to do it, Bill. I could never really understand what the long-term play was. Some people have remarked, like what you hinted, that a lot of this was the raw materials, the mining rights, especially around certain minerals that Afghanistan has, that really more determined America's decision to stay there more than anything.
No, I actually worked in that area because civil military operations were trying to set up industries and systems where they could make money and make a living. Unfortunately, the ministries who controlled the Ministry of Natural Resources took a big payoff from the Chinese, and the Chinese control most of the major mineral deposits. They bottom up. He actually went out of the country with $8 million, which isn't much. And, he's been brought up under criminal charges, but those contracts are in place with China. China is the only one who really made out well that referenced those. And they're developing the world's largest copper mine in China. There are a lot of natural minerals and rocks, but I'll tell you what, that's so controlled and regulated by their own government at all different levels. And they have tariffs and taxes and the mining, and then they get the warlords that own little mines. So it's pretty messed up. It's a pretty hard country to tame. It's a tough thing, but just keeping right now about 10,000 special operations folks, just stabilizing some of the core areas, and then slowly still trying to empower their army. They're a very basic culture too. They're not. I mean, it's just the average lifespan is 43. They still build their houses out of mud in most of the areas. Yeah, a little bit in the cities, you have a little bit better construction. They do have roads and cars. So it's a completely different world. But that said, you want to bring some stabilization to that area because it could be a place that terrorists could work out of and develop from. And then
Well,
in Iraq is the killing of what Christians are left and the bloodshed internally in Iraq. I mean, by pulling out, a lot of people lost their lives. And then,
do you really think? I don't. You could, you might disagree with this statement, but I don't actually think Iraq exists anymore.
No, I agree. And then they have the Turkey problem.
I think fundamentally Iraq, quite a while ago, fundamentally as a effective state.
When Saddam Hussein was destroyed, the whole country started changing. Yeah, it would have been. Everyone agrees it would have been better to keep a strong man in power there, even though he was bad. It still was better for the people than what would they have now, what they've gone through. So, but anyway, it's just interesting the policies. His policy in Gitmo, his exchanging of terrorists for a trader. Mm-hmm. I mean, two of those guys they traded, I know a little bit about, and two of them executed women in soccer fields. They let go from Gitmo. And the other thing too, under the Geneva Convention and law, they didn't have any like patches or uniforms or fighting like terrorists. They can literally be hung instead of going to Gitmo. And we made the decision not to hang and kill people. By the way, when we turn them over to the Afghans, they get hung and killed. When they go to Gitmo, they survive.
Yeah, well, that is a good point, isn't it?
Just a thought. Just think about that. And they're pretty bad folks.
No, that is a good point.
Intelligence, to gather intelligence from them. That's the only reason I can think of they ended up there.
Yeah. So your main criticism of Obama is that you feel, but you could say that at best he made the decision that a higher presence in both countries, long term, medium term, let's say over a 5-10 year period, really the outcome would be no more different than they have been for the past 10 years. You could argue that you're on a losing horse here, and it's just time to just call it a day.
If you pull out what happens in Iraq. I mean, it just wasn't well handled. I think around the country, just as foreign policy is. So, and the other thing too is, I would say, there's been some divisiveness underneath him. He's created a division in himself. In a weird way.
To finish off, in what way?
So, well, I mean, he seems like the country is in worse shape now than it was 8 years ago.
Well, I would agree with Nick's statement. He's a blue Democrat. That's the strange situation. The actual Fox News and some on the far right make out that he's some kind of radical. He is totally the opposite. There's not a bit of radicalism in him.
I think he's hooked to the big business and cultures too. I know companies that took over big contracts under his administration, totally just like any other administration. I won't say who they are because I worked with them. I didn't work for them. I worked for BA. I'll say I worked for BA once. BA got taken over by replaced by another company out of Chicago, which runs intelligence.
Yeah, but British, they're notorious for the backhanders they gave to the Middle East.
The British?
It's a notorious. It's been investigated numerous
British
times.
Petroleum.
Yeah, another great British company. But fundamentally, your observation of Obama and his relationship to his corporate backers, I would say, is about spot on. He owed a lot. They found him. They made him what he was. He came out of the blue. Nobody really knew much about him. He spoke, he was a good talker. He spoke a good language. And he owed a lot of the corporate backers that got him there big time.
Right. No, I saw that. Yeah. I saw the quality of the people that was showing up. And I didn't think much of the quality of the people who are funneling down. They're pretty naive. A lot of the people, see what happened, I think, under the Bush administration, at least you had people with a little bit more military background or different service related backgrounds. And they're more business people. He sort of expanded government, I think, and the type of people that were being replaced. See, in the State Department, they have about 5,000 appointees. They appoint them. It's a 5-year term, and you get appointed by the president. And they start filtering in their GS-14s. And the people he was filtering in were like terrible. I mean, they're just clueless and very, very, very little military background or understanding of what's going on the ground. So that's the first inkling. And then Hillary Clinton, why did they ever make Hillary Clinton the Secretary of State? What were her qualifications? She's been a senator for a couple of years and the president's wife.
I can't answer you.
What were her qualifications?
I totally agree with you. It was mind numbing. I really thought, but I wasn't.
Yeah, I like Leon
that
Panetta
surprised.
Too. Leon Panetta was real good. He's a Democrat. I liked him.
Well, but on the other hand, I think all these people really, Bill, are just the face of the firm. I call the Pentagon and the defense industry and all I call it the firm. It has a life of its own. There's a lot of people making an enormous amount of money out of all this, and they're very determined that the good days keep on going. they really are quite determined that the payouts and the money that they've spent, that the good old days keep on going. And I do call them the firm. I see them as a kind of quasar, kind of semi-criminal enterprise that is really about making money and making gobs of money, gobs and gobs of money, Bill.
Yeah.
The kind of money that most Americans have no comprehension. Well, I'm talked out, Bill. I'm off now.
Hey, Jonathan, we didn't get together today. You want to come up and Zoom for a few minutes afterward?
Can we do that tomorrow?
You said that the last 2 days. Yeah.
I know. All right. Well, I will do. I will text you tomorrow.
Hey, do you have anything scheduled for next month? Quick question.
Next month?
Other than the one? Yeah, next month. I'm trying to consolidate like in the morning, try to do it at 9. I'm just so used to 9 o'clock.
Well, we discussed it in tomorrow.
Okay. I just want to don't schedule anything next month except for the one big function. Yeah. If we can figure out how to do it, how to hook things together as much as possible.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this up tonight. This will be up on timelines. This will be timelines. This will be go timelines of success.com or timelinesnetcasting.com. It will be up tonight on iTunes, hopefully about 25 minutes. I thought it was an okay discussion today. Let me the press coming through.
Well,
can you find somebody down in Carson City who wants to come up on the show?
Yeah, I might be able to find somebody.
Knock on the governor's, off.
Well, I'd love to get Abby Martin on.
Abby Martin.
Oh, she used to be a presenter for RT television, but now Russian television, Bill. But she's now an independent reporter. She's a fantastic reporter.
Where does she report?
She's been doing a series on the Real News Network.
Is that Carson City or is it someplace else?
No, she's a national. She's based. Nick might know her. She's an artist. She's an artist as well, and she lives in Los Angeles, so he might know her actually.
Well, we've had, like I said twice, we've had 2,700 people view or come through once, 1,200. Tonight's not much, or 50, and we have 4 on now. But let's work slowly at getting someone on as a guest and sort of bring them into the fire, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be great. See you later, Bill.
Somebody just said, "Can you get Abby on?"
It was it, yeah, Abby Martin. She's a bit of a spitfire, to say the least. Oh, Abby, but she's been doing a fantastic. I'm not sure you would enjoy what she's been putting on.
I see her picture. That's her, Abby Martin, American journalist. Yeah.
What? Sorry.
Right.
I'm not seeing.
San Diego University. Oh. Where did she come out? What do you think of Abby Martin? Tweet her.
Pardon?
You can put up her Twitter account and ask her to come on.
Yeah, well, she's done
138,000 followers.
Oh yeah, she's well known. She's well known, Abby. But she's done a fantastic series on the Real News Network. She actually did an interview of he ran as president when Bush was against Gore. Nader, the car guy, that he was independent for the presidency. She interviewed him a few weeks ago. It was a great interview. Nader called Hillary a corporate criminal.
Really? No, I definitely like her.
Yeah, Nader, he said it 3 times. He to say he didn't mince his words would be understatement. He called Bill and Hillary Clinton.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Ralph Nader. Yeah. He said it 3 times actually, so it wasn't a mistake, was it?
No. I'm looking at her site right now. Ex-military officer on intelligence hoax, corporate interest drive war, and why the Empire ship is sinking.
Oh yeah, that's it. The Empire Files. That's what she's been doing.
I'll put that in here. I'll have to watch it.
She's had some great interviews actually, but she doesn't mince her words though.
So
she doesn't mince. All right then, Bill. I'll see you later.
Let's get to work. Let's figure out how to make some money. Let's be good capitalists and make money.
Yeah,
and hire people. Fun. Hire more people.
Yeah.
Make more money. You can hire people.
There's nothing wrong with capitalism, Bill.
Yeah. Okay. Good night.
See you later. Bye.